Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Letting Off Steam Carpet Cleaning Podcast. I am your host, Dallas Larson. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hey, today we got a good episode for you. I'm going to be talking about the age-old carpet cleaning rivalry question. Should you use a wand or a rotary extractor? So it's going to be a good episode. I'm going to deep dive into my thoughts with it and kind of my personal feelings. And they are strong. I do have strong feelings towards this. So get ready for some hot takes and some things like that. I've gotten into a few I wouldn't say arguments, but let's say debates with other carpet cleaners about this topic. So should be a good one for you. Before we get into it, please do me a favor and subscribe to this podcast wherever you are at. Please like the show as well and leave a review if you feel so inclined. So thanks so much again for tuning in. Okay, so let's get right into it then. Rotaries versus wands. They each have their advantages. They each have disadvantages. Let's kind of go through it and talk about it. So if you look back at the history of carpet cleaning, right, you had back in the early 1800s, carpet cleaning was mainly rugs, and you would take them outside and you would beat them. You know, you'd hang them up on a clothes wire or something, and then you'd beat the dust out of them and then bring them back in. And then you kind of developed into maybe washing them a little bit. And then it's kind of debated in the carpet cleaning world when hot water extraction first became a real thing. We do know that it was for sure in the 1960s. It could have been. There are reports of it being as early as 1947. But somewhere in that time frame, hot water extraction from a truck mount really first came into existence. And that's where you get companies like Hydromaster and ProChem, where they first really started out, was back in the 60s and everything. And when it first came out, man, the truck mounted hot water extraction system with a wand was revolutionary. And it still is today. I'm not going to bash the wand. If you can't tell, and if you haven't followed me or don't know much about me yet, I run a rotary extractor on every single carpet cleaning job that I do, unless there's an extenuating circumstance that makes me run a wand. But I literally run it on every single job, and a lot of people think I'm crazy. But so the wand, when it first came out, was revolutionary to the carpet cleaning world. And obviously for good reasons today. I mean, it's still being used today. And so I'm not bashing the wand, although I do think there are ways to get a carpet a little bit cleaner, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. So when did rotaries first become a thing? We know that as early as the 1980s is when they really first started to become a thing, at least according to my research, is when they were first invented. We know in the 90s, their Rotovac and things were starting to do a lot more stuff. But it really hasn't been very long where rotaries have been kind of, I wouldn't say standard, but a lot more commonplace. I would say within the last 20 years is when we've really started to see rotaries come into focus in the carpet cleaning world. Talking with different carpet cleaners and things like that. And it just seems like they weren't as popular more than 20 years ago. So I wouldn't say they're a new technology or a new thing, although they're definitely not as common as a wand. So if you are new to the carpet cleaning world and you're wondering what the heck I'm talking about, I'll put a couple of clips up right now of what a rotary extractor looks like. It looks a lot like a floor buffer that you would see a janitor use, other than it does suck out dirty water similar to a wand does. You hook your hoses up just how you would with a wand, except it spins around, shoots water in, sucks it all out at the same time. It's the same, I guess, process as a wand. It's just a little bit more intense. And I don't think there's any debate on whether a rotary cleans as good as a wand does. I think most people would agree that a rotary does clean better than a wand does. However, the debate comes in when you ask the question, do carpets need a rotary on every single job? Does every single carpet need to have a rotary done, or is a wand going to do the job as best as it can possibly be done. Well, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So, what are the different types of rotaries? Well, I think the most common one is probably the Rotovac 360i. I have used this one in the past. It's really good. The one that I personally use is the RX20 by HydroMaster. I believe that Mighty makes a rotary extractor as well, although I'm not as familiar with that. Those are going to be your two main ones. They're going to be the Rotovac 360i's and the RX20s. Obviously, with wands, excuse me. Obviously, with wands, there's a ton of different variations of it. You have just your standard wand, you have the zipper, the bonzer, the swivel head wands, the mighties, the TMF. I mean, there are so many different variations of the wand. They all essentially do the same thing, although obviously I know like a zipper and a bonzer, if you haven't seen one before, it's kind of like enclosed. It looks like a big rectangle going back and forth. I might have some footage of it. I'll try to put it up if I can. But essentially, they're all doing the same thing. They all have usually 4 jets or so that spray down, and then the suction goes over top of it. So it's shooting the water in and sucking it out. So what I will say, first of all, when talking about the difference between them and which one is better, I would much rather, if I were hiring a carpet cleaner, I think the quality of carpet cleaner you hire matters a lot more than the equipment they use. And what I mean by that is I would much rather have somebody who is committed to doing the best job possible, who takes their time, who even maybe runs a CRB, pre-vacuums, and uses a wand, rather than somebody who's just going to come in, get in and out as fast as they possibly can, and run a rotary, even though the rotary may quote unquote clean better. I think the quality of carpet cleaner you are matters more than the equipment that you use. I'll say that right up front. Now let's kind of talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages to using a rotary versus a wand. The first thing that you have to consider when looking at it is the upfront cost. Okay. A good wand you can get for $1,000 or less, usually a lot less, especially if you go the used route. But even the newer wands you can get for fairly cheap. They're fairly inexpensive. And that's a big reason why I think they're a lot more popular than rotaries. An RX20, for example, like what we use, I think on John Don when I was looking before this, it was $4,000 brand new. And it could be more expensive other places. I don't know. So you do have an upfront cost with wands, or excuse me, with rotaries over the wands, right? And that makes sense. I mean, a rotary is pretty mechanical. It's pretty simple. There's no electrical components. There's not a gearbox. There's not a head that you have to assemble and disassemble. There's a lot less going on with wands than there are with rotaries. That's for sure. And I won't doubt, and I will not deny that wands are definitely a lot more affordable up front than rotaries. The other thing about rotaries that I think kind of drive a lot of people away is going to be the maintenance and the upkeep on them. Believe me, RX20s, rotaries, there is a lot more maintenance that goes into them than a wand. I will fully admit that a lot of our headaches that we get can come from running a rotary. It's just a fact. And it's something that I've learned to deal with, mainly because that's all I've ever known really is running rotaries. But if you're not used to running them and kind of getting to know, I mean, I've had 10 years experience running RX20s. When something breaks, I usually am able to diagnose it myself. I may not be able to fix it myself, but I can get pretty close. And that's after 10 years of using it every single day. And so again, there is a lot more maintenance, and therefore there is a lot more money that goes into maintenance. For example, with the RX20 that we run, it has a removable head on it. And a lot of times if you bump that head on some tile, something like that, number one, you can cause damage. Number two, you can actually break that head. And it's to buy a new star head is, a few $100, and then hopefully all your parts on that star are okay. And then you have to replace that as well. So those are the two first advantages that the wand has. Like I said, one advantage to the rotary is that it does clean better than a wand. Flat out, period. If anybody wants to debate me on that, I will gladly do so. I firmly believe that a rotary does clean better than a wand. And so that's going to be the big advantage to an RX, to a rotary, RX20, Rotovac, whatever you want to call it, is the fact that it cleans better. And again, the question comes back to, well, with the upfront cost, with the maintenance on it, and some of the carpet I clean isn't that dirty, is it worth the investment to buy a rotary? Well, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later and kind of give you my thoughts on why I continue to run a rotary, even with all of these other issues that you face with it. So the other advantage to an RX20 for me is it's a lot less physical. Yeah, you're on your feet all day, every day, no matter what. However, pushing a wand back and forth, man, it can be really, really taxing on your body. And the times where I have cleaned with a wand, I can tell that by the end of the day, I'm not cleaning nearly as good as I was at the beginning of the day. Now, a lot of that could come down to, yeah, once I get the right side of my body in shape to push a wand all day, yeah, then I might be able to have a little bit more endurance with that. But the rotary, I mean, once you get it down, it's so much less physical as far as the actual cleaning. So that's a huge plus in my book, especially when you're dealing with employees and keeping them satisfied and making sure they're doing the job right. If it's a Friday, their last job on a Friday, and they've been working for 4 days already, or 5 days even, well, it's quite possible that their quality may not be as good, and myself included, even on that, not just employees, but myself included. My quality may not be as good because my body's simply just worn out. All right. And those of you who run wands will probably tell me that, that's not true. It's not as bad as I'm thinking, but I've definitely felt that. Again, without running a wand every single day, I've definitely felt that. So from a cleanliness standpoint, I really don't think there's any question on what's going to be better, a rotary versus a wand. A couple other advantages the wand has. These are pretty quick ones that I can just rattle off the top of my head. Number one, a wand is lighter. It's easier to carry up and down stairs. As to why I still choose to clean with a rotary every single day. And yes, I understand the argument, and I've heard it a lot before, that most carpets that we clean, they don't need a Rotovac or an RX20 or any other rotary you're using. You can get by using a wand just fine. A lot of it comes back to me, number one, the physicality, like I kind of talked about, but also just the mentality of I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get these carpets as clean and give the customer the best experience possible. And a lot of that for me just comes down to using a rotary and just dealing with all the other issues that come with it. And believe me, I can think off the top of my head right now, at least half a dozen to 10 customers who have mentioned that they use us specifically because we run a rotary. They can see for themselves that we are agitating the carpet a lot better. We're getting a lot more of the dirt and soil out. And I truly believe that we do have a lot of customers who continue to use us because we run rotaries on our jobs. I firmly believe that. Again, not to say that you can't do a really good job with a wand, but personally, whenever I clean with the wand, I always use a CRB, a counter rotating brush, with the wand, just to make sure I'm agitating it as good as I possibly can. And I know a lot of other people out there run CRBs and wands, and they do a fantastic job. This isn't me knocking any other carpet cleaner and me saying, "Oh, I'm better because I run a rotary on my jobs." No, I'm not saying that at all. If you're listening out there and you're running a wand and you are committed to giving your customers the best possible service you can, then I think you're doing a fantastic job. Just for me personally, I find that I can give a better experience to the customer when I run a Rotary. Now, that's my opinion, and that's why I'm doing this podcast, is because I get to share my opinion. And if you have a different opinion, I honestly would love to hear your reasoning for thinking a wand is better to use than a Rotary. Please leave a comment, reach out to me, and I'm definitely could be naive in this area. So please feel free to reach out. I won't be offended at all if you have a different opinion. So I personally just find that running an RX-20 on every single job just gives me a competitive edge against my customers. And we use the fact that we run an RX-20 in our marketing, in our strategies. And I think it's something that really sets us apart and really does help us, like I said, kind of have a competitive edge against our competitors in our area. And I think it's a good idea for everybody to have a Rotary, even if you buy a used one, just to have it on hand. Because I really think on a lot of dirty jobs that I run into, I am so grateful that I have a Rotary for that job. I think it saves time when you come across a really, really dirty job. And it can really help, again, just make the carpet cleaner, make the customer experience a lot happier, and overall just improve your cleaning. So that's it for this podcast, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you have any opinions or you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment or send those in, and I'd be happy to respond to them. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.